this life was all I ever wanted.
I'm not leaving. Not yet.
I was hoping you'd say that.
We gotta hit the streets, make some money.
People like us must destroy people like him. Buckle up.
Get Showtime free at Showtime.com.
UFC announced last week 3 events in 7 days. A Saturday, a Wednesday, and a Saturday. The first of them will be the zombie, essentially, that is UFC 249. Now, let me start with the most basic elemental question about all of this, BC, which is, what is the Brian Campbell level of confidence that not one, not two, but all 3 in that 7-day period take place?
I'm going to go 95%. Luke, I really feel like we are past the hurdle that we needed to get past, which was Dana White and UFC getting in line with a state commission, in this case, Florida, the only one currently of the 50 that's opening these doors, but I believe it will be the start of many more if you're following the news, to do this the right way, Luke. Yes, it's ambitious, 3 cards in 7 or 8 days, but it's all going to be in the same city, Jacksonville, the same arena, the VyStar Veterans Memorial Arena. And this is the start we needed, and this is the right way to do it, which is really the key important part. I don't think that Dana White's early ambition was necessarily fueled by the right things. There was definitely reckless tones in nature to what he was doing. A lot of the criticism was deserved, but I did ask you that question probably about a month ago on this show, Luke. Will there become a time during this fight when Dana White kind of goes from like reckless, crazy guy, I have secured an island, to almost like Robin Hood of pro sports to bring this back? Now, that's a little bit too generous of a statement to put on the guy, but he's creating this light at the end of the tunnel to get our jobs moving again and I guess provide entertainment for people that are sorely lacking it, and to get his fighters back in there. And again, final answer, if it can be done safely and correctly, yes, I'm all in on it. I talked to Demetrius Johnson this week, who of course fights for one championship, and he summed it up as simplistic as I've heard it, Luke. If you can have people fly in and arrive at a site, if they can all be tested and everyone's safe and they enter a building, well, they should be able to exit that building without contracting the COVID-19. So as long as we can stay in that mind frame and have people flying in and out and keeping the structure safe, Luke, let's frickin' do this, bro.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, that's not as correct, and it's not that simple at all, which is why this whole thing could potentially become a disaster. But that's a separate point I'd like to make. To answer the first question, what is my confidence that the first 3 will take place? High, very high. In fact, I suspect that you indicated Florida's open first for business, other states will follow. I think that's true. Now, I also think some states are going to open for business and then close again, and then open again, and then close again. There's going to be this rolling, I'm not going to say inability to stay open, but people are going to have to make adjustments on the fly based on how this whole thing goes. And I think whether Florida does it or doesn't, you're going to see some of this, yes, start, but then back up and then start and back up again. It's just not going to be a linear process. But as for those 3 next week, the first one, I'd say 100% it happens. Second one, I'm going to say 100%. The third one, I'll say 99, because Lord only knows what kind of complicating factor could happen in those first 2 shows that maybe captures people's imaginations and leads to scrutiny. It's hard to say exactly. So I'm still saying it's a virtual guaranteed lock, all 3 happen. I would just be a little bit cautious about the last one. After that, though, it's really hard to tell. Dana White telling Kevin Iole of Yahoo Sports, they've submitted a 30-page paper to the governor in Nevada to show all the things they're going to do from a safety standpoint to get that business up and running again if they can end up lifting some of the social restrictions. So do they go back to Nevada after that? Do they stay in Florida somewhere? He said by the 23rd of next month, they'll be back there. But I think for next week, Brian, my level of confidence that those 3 shows take place is high. The question then becomes a little bit different, which is it a good idea given that we know Florida, what do you want to say, Brian? Not known as one of the better commissions.
They crazy down there.
Yeah, not known as one of the better commissions in the sport. Now, your point is well taken. I absolutely agree. This is not April 18th all over again. This is not some rush. This is not self-regulating when the peak of the virus has hit the country and going outside of the commissions. It's the opposite. They've got the governor involved. They've got the mayor involved. They've got the commission involved. And whatever you want to say about their level of oversight, that's the state giving their consent to it. That's a brand new ball game. Plus, they've had more time to refine some of their processes around protocol, although we still don't know much. That being said, Brian, here's my point about this. Do I think something's going to go wrong the first show? No. Second show? No. Third show? Probably not. Who knows when and how? But my point about Florida is this. They put on a show at the height of the pandemic, or at least the height of the beginning of the pandemic. I'll just say this, the beginning of the pandemic. And they didn't do any COVID testing whatsoever. They did temperature checks at the weigh-ins, and that was really about it, right? So to me, it's like I trust the UFC to do more than I do the state of Florida. And the two together, maybe that's enough to keep everyone safe. But I go back to what Margaret Goodman said. I'm not gonna hector the MMA world at this point. Everyone's got their opinion on this. You have enough information to make a decision about it. But when we get back to like what safe actually is, testing someone outside the business and the venue actually isn't good enough because you can get a lot of false positives, or false negatives rather. So that doesn't tell you a whole lot. So my only point of this is they're going to do, I think, as much as they reasonably can because the UFC doesn't want this to come back on them. But to me, that's not the same thing as saying we've crossed all the T's and we've dotted all the I's. There's still risk involved.
I got 2 points to say in response to that, and I think you're right on all that. Number one is that, not to get socio-political on you because I largely try to avoid that, but I do think it's time for events like this to take place. There's a middle ground now. I don't think the state of California or Florida should flood with thousands of people on the beach, which we're seeing. I don't think that's safe, but I think a in-between sort of setup where you could go to your barber and have one person in there at a time, or get your nails done, or sit at a cafe 4 tables apart, whatever the middle ground is for regular life, it's time. The economy cannot hold this up. And obviously it's harder to do that in inner cities as it is in the suburbs where things aren't as insane at the moment. I think this level of no crowd fighting, perfectly reasonable to fit in the middle of that. But it goes back to echo that first point about doing it right. And a couple weeks ago, I thought Dana White was wrong. Right now, I think he's 9/10 of the way there to doing right. That 1/10, though, is potentially troubling. And what that it constitutes, Luke, I'm sure you saw the Instagram Live he did with Brett Okamoto of ESPN and then the follow-up with Kevin Iole. In both, he purposefully dodged or outright decided not to answer that direct question. Will you have COVID testing on site for the fighters and staff? And the purpose of that is really what questions you of why, right? I'm not going to say he's not answering because the answer is no, and he's trying to pull one by us. I think it's more of him just holding his ground and being like, I'm blaming all this on the media, so I'm going to continue to stiff arm you, but we got it. If long as the testing's going on and everything's safe, I don't actually want the details or care. Okay, I do. I'm a journalist. I want to know, but I'm not going to be pressing and getting it at that point. But why wouldn't you say yes? Why wouldn't you nod your head even yes and just go like, look, I'm not giving you the details, but yes, obviously. The fact that he's been very hard at that edge and saying, nope, not going to answer that, not going to, quote, feed the media anymore. I've done that before. I'm not going to do it anymore. This ain't feeding the media. This is answering the most important question in this entire equation. So Dana's reluctance to actually confirm COVID testing and instead use it as a generic, look, we're all about health and safety. We've always been. That's a little bit troubling at this point, obviously. We're watching the fights at home. We're not there. We don't have as much of a stake involved. If you're telling me this is just his response, behind the scenes it's all buttoned up, then that's cool. But this was weird, as was his reluctance in telling Brett Okamoto in that same interview where the site was, even though A, it was already reported, and B, the UFC put out a press release during that interview. That's a little bit bizarre behavior. If we can get away from that, and Jay's wanting me to get away from that right now because he feels I'm holding down the show, we'll be in a great spot, Luke, and I'll have really no criticisms.
Like I said, here's the thing. I don't think there's any way they have that show without COVID testing, and I would say multiple layers of it. I'm sure that, again, the UFC does not want blowback on themselves. I am certain that in their minds, they're doing everything possible. The question is, are they right? And without any kind of transparency about what they're trying to do, maybe? Yeah, probably. I mean, no one really knows. The last thing I'll say about this is you're right about it. It's like when Fight Island is ready, do you think that they're not going to brag about everything that they have on that island? About every facility, about every T they've crossed, every I they've dotted, everything they have from a health and wellness standpoint to a training standpoint and everything else in between? They're going to brag about every element of it all the way down. As well they should. They'll have earned it. My only point being is if you want to brag about something like that, why wouldn't you brag about the safety protocol that you've also claimed to figure out? You're not telling Brett or me or you. You're telling the public. And that's what they're denying. But again, I think it'll probably be fine for the first few shows. After that, who the hell knows? I guess we're going to have to figure this all out and see.
This life was all I ever wanted.
I'm not leaving. Not yet.
I was hoping you'd say that.
We gotta hit the streets, make some money.
People like us must destroy people like him. Buckle up.
Get Showtime free at Showtime.com.